Welcome back to the forecourttech podcast. And in this episode, we're talking about all things security, AI, and mobility. And I'm delighted to have Matt from BigBrother in the Netherlands with us. Matt, first of all, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ralph. Excited to be here.
Now, we all have heard of BigBrother, whether it's the book 1984 or whether it's the TV show. But tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
Yeah, so BigBrother is a camera security company originally, existing for almost 30 years. And we have developed our own camera security platform specifically for the retail and mobility market. And that's what we are more known for in the mobility market than the TV show is, I suppose. And we've been around longer than them. So we are the true Big Brother in that sense. But of course, everybody's fear is about the Big Brother society that we have nothing to do with again.
Well, it's interesting looking at security because I've been on your website and there's some fascinating case studies, like, for example, people driving through a forecourt and not paying, of course, is one of the case studies. And I think there's somebody on there that says they reduced the chances of that happening by over 80% once they employed your technology. Now, your platform is called Watch It, and you provide that for mobility and also for retail. Can you just tell us a little bit about the technology? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at the traditional physical security markets, you have a lot of manufacturers developing cameras and software, and they're all targeting a global market and a global, what we often see, generic market. And what we have seen is that in the retail market and mobility in particular, the needs are so specific and the processes can be so complex that generic technology doesn't bring an answer. And that's why we have this philosophy of one market, one solution, and that solution is Watch It, which is indeed exclusively developed for that mobility and retail market.
So when you look at your platform, what are the modules that are in there? You said that there are cameras, so they're watching the forecourt. What other things are you doing? What do you do with that data? And how does it enable forecourt owners to run a more successful business?
Yeah, so I think to answer that question, we should go back almost 30 years to the first product Big Brother ever developed. Our products are all based on camera security and camera technology. But the problem is that more than 99% of the footage recorded by security cameras is never watched. And of that other remaining less than 1%, it's estimated that only 2% holds effective evidence. You could say we're doing a lousy job by providing 0.0.2% value. But the key is, how do you get to that very low percent of detail the fastest? And our first product was made for bike shelters, where you had an access control system to get your bike out and a camera to keep an overview on it. And the requirement from the customer was very simple. I need to get an overview of who is entering and if they're taking the right bike. And the idea we had was simple. Why don't we link data to video? Because all these systems are traditionally very siloed. But if you start to integrate, you can just search on, for instance, Ralph and see all the times your badge was used at the door with directly the picture or video of that moment. No need to watch the other 99% of video that doesn't contain a moment wherein your badge was scanned. And this is technology of, well, almost 30 years ago. Fast forward to today, we do this in depth in the retail market. So the essence of our platform is that we are the camera security platform, the VMS, video management system as you wish. But all our handling is based on data. Data of still access control, but data of the pumps, of the EV chargers, of the car wash, of the POS system, the cash registry system. And all that data we digest in Watch It to provide that ease of experience for our users, that they can just search on, give me the evidence of all the drive-offs. Give me the evidence of every time a package of Marlboro was corrected on a ticket. Give me all the evidence of a cashier manually opening the cash drawer. Because again, you don't want to be looking at that 99% of footage that has nothing to do with the moment you're looking for. You want to go directly to that module or that moment of fraud. And this is also the modularity on our software. So it starts with cameras, and we add all these integrations on top of it to provide that experience. And then we go further with the process automation.
That's quite interesting. So you have this huge pool of data. You're then, let's say there has been fraud with the cashier, the person receiving the payments. You can go in and look at when that person is actually working, when the cash drawer is opened. I imagine as well you can almost predict or send an update. I mean, I was also reading about, for example, EV chargers that are not working properly. So if you see that people are not using EV charger number one because it clearly doesn't work, you can then trigger an alert for maintenance. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Ralph. So it all started our product philosophy with this integration. And this was the first level of functionality we've been providing for 20 years. And of course, with the growing complexity on the forecourt and in the shop, we've been adding systems. But the layers we have built on top of that in the last years are a business excellence layer to manage your sites better. Were the lights working in the night? Is the garbage full or not? But indeed, also, is an EV charger, nice example, this is very relevant nowadays. It, as long as it's connected online, they know everything about it and everything up to the plug. But what they don't know if something is physically blocking the charger. And this is, for instance, one of these integrations where we integrate with the charger to get the data from the charger. And we verify that against the visual aspects that we can see from our platform, and then automatically trigger alerts to say, hey, this charger is online but physically blocked, or this charger is offline but also damaged. And this was the evidence of what happened there. And this is this whole layer of process automation on top of it, which requires the integration to start with, but really is a big difference in this one market, one solution philosophy of ours that a generic security technology provider will not easily make because they're again targeting a global market.
So when you look at the use cases from your clients, where is your technology having the biggest impact?
So I think by far the biggest impact is in keeping a grip on your business. And we see that if you are an entrepreneur running a car wash or an entrepreneur running a gas station with a shop, probably you are aware of most of the things. You have 20, 30 members of staff and you are there every day. This starts to get more tricky when you start adding sites, when you start to run unmanned, when you start to add EV charging. And here we see that standardization of grip is really the level that we can provide. And in Basis, we provide all those bits and pieces that you need for a safe physical security environment and the evidence in case the police comes on site. It's all there. But the layer we add, which has the biggest impact, is that if you are that entrepreneur having a whole network of sites, or you are that major oil company or retailer with a big network, you want to have not only information to your site manager, no, you want to have it central also. All the statistics on fraud, how it was handled by employees, all the statistics on the operational performance, and not only from siloed systems that provide you flat data, but with the verification of what actually happened. And this is the layer that video adds, of course.
Fascinating. And out of interest, where does Big Brother operate? Is it all across Europe?
Yeah, currently it is. I often get asked why only Europe. It started in the Netherlands, obviously. We are originally a Dutch company. By now, we are operating in 18 European countries. But we're not only the provider of the technology, but also the integrator. So we have 24-hour coverage on SLAs in 18 European countries. We have boots on the ground if needed, remote support if needed. And this is how we grew, and funny to say, like an oil spill across Europe. Started from the Netherlands, but you have a retailer in the Netherlands that starts to open up sites in Belgium and says, hey, I want to have the same technology, the same level of grip. Then you get noticed by a major oil company that is operating in 8 countries, and after a few years, they want a standardized contract. So we are growing with our customers. Purely technologically, we are very interested in the US, the Middle East, etc. But we haven't gotten there yet. Right now, 18 European countries. And good to mention, Ralph, is that today, more than 7,500 gas stations rely on our technology daily. And then I'm not even talking yet about some of the EV networks that are choosing exclusively for us, the retailers, some of the fast food chains. And this is really the impact we are having on those multi-site retail or mobility networks.
Let's talk a little bit about EV and the transformation. Does it make a difference to your technology, or is it the same technology, the same issues? Are you seeing disruption, different behaviors? What is the number one crime or maintenance issue that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask that because people then come to me and say, hey, I can't have a drive off on an EV charger because it only starts when I scan my RFID tag or my subscription pay. And I say, yeah, that's correct. But If you look at Big Brother as only a drive-off solution, you're looking at probably 1% of all the things we can do. And what we've seen in some of the EV networks that are choosing for our technology is that damage to the chargers, cutting off of the charging cables containing copper, is a thing that we can detect and automatically gather the evidence of. This is, for instance, a very simple use case which nobody ever thought of in the traditional forecourt, because who is cutting off the hoses of a traditional dispenser? I wouldn't imagine that to be a problem at a large scale for theft, at least. Probably vandalism in some cases, but on EV chargers, this is becoming a big issue. The same with blockage. On a traditional forecourt, who's going to block the dispensers because they're all in a drive-through model, etc. But in EV chargers, that many retailers put them in the nicest parking spots in front of their shops and in front of their hospitality areas. And who also wants to park there? Maybe your other customer. Well, you have to detect that and find a way to, in a usually nice way, tell the customer that spot is reserved for customers that want to charge, because it's basically freezing the business. And those are new use cases. On your question of technology, our platform itself didn't change. We add integrations, we add functionality, we add that modularity, but the basis of our platform is just extended, but not changed. This is important, Ralph, because we see that more and more of our customers are struggling with this mix. You have a traditional forecourt, you want to add charging, or you want to add car wash. Do you then want to add a new platform? Do you then want to replace an existing platform? Probably not. You want to extend it. And this is why for all our customers, the basic platform is identical. And with this modularity, you can just add the level of integration and functionality that you need on the go.
So thinking about the technology, I want to ask you about AI. It's on everybody's lips at the moment. Has that revolutionized how you're interrogating this data, the speed at which you can say, there might be a problem here?
Yes and no. I think for AI, you always have the hype curve of everybody starting to talk about it, and businesses struggling to find concrete examples of how to apply it. I think the essence here for our platform is that AI is very valuable, but never AI alone. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you want to detect a charging cable being cut off on an ultra fast charger, you need AI to be able to detect this in the video image. And this is something we provide. But AI alone is not per se reliable enough, but also not enough to make it actionable. Because what value does it have to a retailer to have a dashboard in the cloud of how many cables were cut off? That's pretty useless because it's already too late. No, you want to have the possibility in your platform to directly fire an alarm locally, to fire an alarm remote, to collect the evidence, share that in a safe way. And that is the essence of our platform. So yes, AI enabled where possible, but the whole process around it is just as important as how you are using technology to detect anomalies.
So let's talk about predicting things that may go wrong. I guess if you've got 7,500 sites, you start to understand things that happen over and over again. Is that also part of the problem, that you can say, we're seeing a couple of things happening here, we think maybe this is happening?
Yeah, definitely. And I can give you a very simple example. We know, for instance, from our data that in an absolute majority of cases wherein a cash drawer is opened manually within 30 seconds of a cancellation of a previous ticket, it is because the cashier is taking out money for him or herself, which is, call it fraud, call it theft, give it a name, but that's the least you want to call it. And this is something we can see because of our standardized approach on how we integrate systems. And then it doesn't matter if the customer chose for a POS from supplier A, B, or C. We can make that analysis cross sites and give these standardized types of alerts, correct?
Yeah, that's really, those kind of stories I find quite interesting.
And I had no idea, Ralph, when I started in BigBrother, that crime in retail is such a big thing in general. Maybe I was naive, but also that the majority of crime in retail is internal. And if you can help your customer to get a grip on those processes, the added value is tremendous, because they're the ones committing the fraud are not unknown. They are your own employees in the majority of cases. And I don't want to speak bad about the service champions working hard in the night to help customers. But the reality in retail is that the majority is coming from internal sources, so to speak.
So if you were thinking about moving to autonomous stores and other people on this podcast have talked about pressure on profit margins, particularly as you move to EV. So I think essentially your dwell time, your time in a forecourt is a little bit less than it was because you're perhaps not coming as often with your electric vehicle. You've got to think a bit more, haven't you, about using technology like this, because it's your example of somebody, an employee stealing money is really interesting. But also, if it's an autonomous store, so I can just walk in and walk out, I imagine I've got even more security issues, or potentially I have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also there we have to be very realistic about the stage technology is at. I just read last week that Aldi, a major German supermarket, is closing its autonomous stores with 570 cameras in the store to detect which items people take because they're just missing too much. And then there is no business model yet. But the contrary is also true. If you look at projects in Finland, for instance, where Nestle is adding unmanned stores with vending machines, you have a nice heated environment for a customer to wait for his EV charging to finish. And there, fraud is a much smaller risk because of how they change the business concept. And that's really where you need to find the bridge as a retailer yourself. Hey, what level of security do I need or want, and what level of grip do I want? But also, what experience do I want to provide to my customer? And this is really in that whole dynamic of changing customer demands, new energies. We see customers of us struggling. And yeah, it's nice if we can help them get answers to those questions or at least help them in the right direction.
I'm also interested in the experiences in different countries. So when we've been looking at energy transition on this podcast, there have been examples. Your Finnish example is a good one. You want to keep warm, therefore you'll get out of your car. I do know actually some electric vehicles, if you're charging, won't turn on the heat. I'm not going to name manufacturers, but it's an interesting one if you're in Finland. But equally in Madrid, in Spain, we've heard that people want to get out of the sunlight. So there are charging stations that are underground, that are air conditioned, and then that's an opportunity to sell them things as well. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, yes, you're in 18 countries, but not everybody is the same, are they? So there must be some fascinating stories from different parts of Europe that you've come across.
There's immediately a story that comes to mind that in a very simple example of how people use a gas station, traditional one in this example, in Northwest Europe, it's very common to refuel your tank full, right? Um, we had stories years ago when we started in Italy that our system wasn't fast enough, according to the customer. He said, yeah, every time I'm mixing up transactions and my customer is gone before you have been able to identify the license plate and check for fraud. How is this possible? Our technology is so fast. And he said, yeah. So we went on site with some of our lead engineers to look at the problem. And like, no idea. And there we saw it immediately. They come on site, give €2, €5, refuel that, and drive away. They don't take that much fuel at once on some of those sites. And then you have to adapt your technology to cater for situations like that. And I'm not even talking about only post-pay, prepay scenarios or different retailing concept. I'm just talking about some cultural differences now that affect how customers interact with our customers, with the retailers. And that has a requirement on our technology for sure. But yeah, cool to see those differences also from our perspective on 18 countries. Yeah.
We have a regular feature on this podcast, which is called Past, Present, and Future. And we're talking about technology. So I wonder if there are technologies from the past that maybe you thought they would really take off and they didn't, or maybe they did. Also, the technology at the moment that you are most excited about. And there may be a future prediction as well, seeing as you're the CTO of BigBrother.
Yeah, I love to talk about technology, Ralph. Directly, something comes to mind. I remember when I started doing this 6 years ago, there was a big hype starting about cloud. And everybody was talking about cloud this, cloud that. And yes, from my perspective, definitely I can say that cloud is very good for many use cases. But there are also use cases where you shouldn't go with the hype, and physical security is one of them. I made a calculation once for one of our customers with 60 cameras, and the internet line he needed to run his whole security in the cloud was of the level of a data center almost, because he wanted to get all that video data real time into the cloud, do all the processing there and get alerted, etc. And I think the trend has returned a little bit. So see from the market that even some of the SMEs and bigger companies are investing again in on-prem data centers, etc. But now back to physical security. If you have a load of network cameras, well, it's like opening up 60 Netflix streams at the same time on the site if you want to do that remotely. And not sure if everybody here has lots of kids at home or, or other people in the house. Your internet will start to struggle if in an apartment block everybody is home in the evening, everybody is watching Netflix on 3, 4 devices at the same time, because in the end you can buy a maximum speed from your provider, but in the end you're sharing the same cables and infrastructure, and to solve that it will just be a big cost. So that's part number one, where we see that a hybrid architecture, needless to say our architecture is hybrid, but a hybrid architecture with on-premise on the customer side, the heavy lifting, data storage, processing, but in cloud, configuration, alerting, and access is the best. And that's really a past technology for the hype cycle, everything to cloud, where really we are on the return. Also, from a security and control perspective, and then IT security, there are some serious concerns about the public cloud, of course. But needless to say that. On current technology, I think the by far most promising technology is the on-edge capabilities of modern devices. And I'm not talking only about IP cameras. You can't buy something for in the house nowadays that doesn't have an IoT possibility. My coffee machine is turned on automatically when I get out of bed. And yes, I'm a technology guy, but translate this into the retail environment. Almost every device, if it's the fridge, if it's the coffee machine, if it's the entry door, is nowadays an IoT device. And why is it current technology? It exists. Why is it not yet future? Because I see customers struggling with this growing complexity of having so many different systems generating alerts. Bringing them all back together is a challenge. And this is, I think, really promising, but it requires an approach from the retail and asset management environment to really start to dictate how they want this to be done. Because you're talking about automation on such a high level that it requires an approach also from the retail environment.
And what about the future?
Yeah, the future is always bright, we say. And Big Brother always says that technology is the answer. In the future, we see a big challenge coming up for retailers to stay in touch with your customer, because the customer behavior is changing, the customer connection is changing. And based on what I just told you about current technology, we see that the site staff is so busy with all these systems that there is very little attention for the customer right now. And this will be the major challenge in the future, to make sure that actually the site staff can focus on the customer. And I was talking with the founder of Linked Car a few years ago, Mario Schrepen, and he told me that, yeah, it's quite normal that the less time you waste on internal systems, the more time you can actually spend on building that true and lasting relationship with your customer. And this is really where I see technology in the future, to be that supporting role, to put humans in touch with humans in the retail environment and outside of that. And we are now in the middle phase where the humans are overloaded with technology instead of using it always as a supporting role towards their interaction with the customer.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point, because we are in a period of huge disruption. This energy transition, as we call it, is not easy, is it? To figure out, where am I going to charge my car? Or
And the energy transition is one thing, Ralph, but I read a report from McKinsey the other day, and they've done a research into mobility demand. So I'm not even talking about the energy, but the mobility demand in general. And McKinsey are not the least to study this. And they said that by 2040, so 15 years from now and a bit, the mobility demand will be plus 50% to now to minus 40% to now. In other words, they have no clue. And yet we do expect retailers and energy providers to take decisions now to invest for 15 years ahead in a mobility demand that is that unsure. And then I'm not even starting to talk about the energy that will be used to fulfill that mobility demand. So there is a high level of uncertainty in the market there. And that's why, coming back to grip, managing the processes in such a way that you have grip on a central level, that you have information at the hands of your people in the store to make that building a lasting relationship with your customer, is the only way to get through this. Because if you get your refueling customer now to be loyal in your bakery, in your car wash, he will stay there when he has an EV. If you get your EV customer now to come for lunch always to you and charge, he will stay there also if it will be hydrogen that you'll be offering in the future. So the energy mix has a level of insecurity, but in itself, the customer doesn't have, because the customer is human and he wants to be seen, recognized, and well cared for. And that's that fast, easy, and safe customer experience that we should strive for. And we believe that systems should be supporting the human factor in that.
I think that's, it's interesting as well that with EVs, the quickest way to lose a customer is when your chargers don't work. So if you go onto the review sites, like for example, Google Maps, you will see ratings where people are saying, I went, none of the chargers worked. I couldn't get in touch with anybody. When I think about the other fuel mixers, so gasoline, if I arrive at a gas station and they're refueling or some of the pumps don't work, it doesn't really register in my mind when I next want to refuel that gas station was a problem. I just think, oh, they've run out of diesel or unleaded or whatever fuel that I wanted. But with EV, it does seem to matter. So there is a bit of changing behavior, or maybe we'll all just use an app and the app will just say, unfortunately, your forecourt dropped below 4 stars out of 5, so I'm not even going to recommend it.
Oh, my favorite functionality, I drive full EV for quite some time now. My favorite functionality is that when I navigate to a charging stop, it tells me on the navigation screen if that charger was used before today successfully. And it's my favorite functionality because I know I at least going there and I will be able to do what I came to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So there are some slight changes in behaviors. Just thinking ahead for your own platform, it must be fascinating to work in an area where there's so much change going on. But what are your hopes for the future for BigBrother?
So I think we should go a little step back to get to the future, because we have built our products and we have built our technology based on the needs of our customers and based on what we can do with integrations. And in the 6 years that at the time with BigBrother, I've seen a change in our customers. More and more of the decisions are made on a central level and less involvement with the factual retail environment. And that's a danger that functionality will start to slowly be lost on that level because of cost savings or because of others. And the biggest change there, Ralph, that we have seen is the increasing demand and requirements that are being put on IT resilience and cybersecurity. And let's be honest, this is something 6 years ago, very few companies were thinking about on the advanced level that we are expected to think of this today. And this required also a big change from us, because if you are a company that is by nature integrating with systems, you are by nature an interesting target. So I wouldn't call us a sitting duck, but by nature, you are an interesting target. So we really went back to the drawing board and said, okay, but hey, if this is the situation and the value we provide to the service champions on site, to the site manager, is that level of integration, we should do it in the safest way possible to actually be able to do this in the future. And that's where our security by design philosophy came from, to say, hey, but okay, doing things in a safe way technologically is one thing, right? Just making sure you use the right encryption, you use the right process for patch management, for updates, etc. Okay, this is like a hygienic demand now. Without this, you can't compete anymore in a market like this. Okay, fine. This is a must do. But how can we actually make sure we also trigger our users to use it in the right way? Because if you are a site manager and you are using your phone to make a video of something on site and you're posting it on social media, then nowadays, in especially some European markets, this is already seen as a data loss and as a big privacy risk by local legislators. And back to our platform, we are by nature integrating and sharing data. And this security by design philosophy made us think about, okay, but how can we force users, so to speak, to do it in the right way? So I'll give you a small example. If you use our mobile app, for instance, you can't take a screenshot. It's like a banking app. If you take a screenshot, you just get a black screen. This you can make easily. But the problem is, if customers can't do it easy, they will do it differently. So they will download the video to their phone and share it on WhatsApp with a colleague to show them what happened, right? And what is happening now is that this colleague has a shared iCloud album with her whole family, and her whole family has this video of what happened on that gas station. This is a data leak waiting to happen. So we also restricted the export rights. So you can't take a screenshot and you can't download the video in our app. But then you take away functionality. So we added a way to share a unique link from that video with a colleague. And if that colleague has the right level of rights, he can see that video. If that link ends up in the wrong hands, the link is useless and harmless. Secure video technology, we call this. And this is one of these examples where I really see that if only the head offices and IT dictate the level of possibility, there will be no possibilities for the site management to actually do their job good, because everything will be restricted. But by doing it in such a way that it complies with all the industry norms, with all the requirements, but providing functionality, customers will do it in the right way. And this is this, how should I call this? Almost, let's just call it a challenge, let's say. A challenge to provide functionality, but in such a way that all the stakeholders have the feeling, oh, this is done in a safe and secure way, but the actual users on the site level actually get to experience the functionality. Because again, if we only dictate things from a cybersecurity perspective and a risk perspective, then we will just forbid a lot of things, which makes sense. So how do we find a way to make them happen? And this is my major wish for the future, that we find a way, not only us, but also other suppliers, POS systems, EV chargers, cars, to keep adding functionality, to keep adding that level of functionality that we want to provide in the safest way possible.
Yeah, I think that would lead us down a conversation about standardization as well. And we've certainly come across in Europe the GDPR problems around security and video. So it's really interesting how you're tackling those issues. And if you're not from Europe, that's data protection, which is something that we've had for a number of years now. I think it's not quite 10 years, but it's certainly not new. And it can potentially mean if you get those permissions wrong, you can't use this video as evidence. So that's why this area of your technology is so important. I suppose a final question, let's just talk about standards. We did have the IFSF standards forum, so the forecourt standards forum on, I think, podcast episode 2, talking about why it's so important to have standardization. Is that an area that you're working on as well, to standardize your APIs and help with that integration?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you integrate by nature, by nature in your interest to have open integrations. So for many years, BigBrother is a member of IFSF, if that is your first question. And I think for our customer, for the retailer, it has the biggest advantage, because if we need to make 10 different integrations to serve the market, in the end, we will do it if we see the market benefit in it. But for them, it gives them the ease of flexibility to change a supplier without affecting the functionality that they have from other suppliers. It changes supplier of the POS without affecting the functionality of dispensers or of BigBrother watches, for instance, is a big benefit for our customer. So standardizations really help there, definitely. And we embrace that. Yeah.
That's all we have time for, Matt, but I know the whole industry is well aware of the Big Brother capabilities, but thanks for talking us through your vision for the world. I think it's fascinating. I'm just so interested in the predictability, the machine learning, the kind of understanding what people do. But for now, that is all we have time for. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ralph. It was a pleasure.